Hey guys, welcome to episode 3 of our new podcast. This one is going to be hosted by myself, Shrenuj, and I have a whole bunch of people here who I will not go through to introduce. But I will go ahead and start off and give us the topic. Well, before we get on the topic, how about we just go around the table, say your name. That's a great way to introduce each other. And tell me what you're drinking. So guys, go ahead. What are you drinking?
I'm Mark. I'm drinking some semen, I guess.
Mark's drinking some semen. I like it.
Some semen, just some normal semen.
Who's sitting to
It happens.
left?
It happens.
Oh, fuck. Jesus. So, before you guys heard my ice cube drops, there are 2 ice cubes in this glass of orange juice.
Are you pregnant? Is that what?
Dude. I'm traveling. I don't drink when I'm on the road.
Like at all?
That's smart.
I drink
No.
more when I'm on the road. Like not on the road, but
I do too.
that's bad. I don't know.
Yeah,
Not that.
barely a little bit on the awkward side.
Yeah, we gotta talk to
Damn it. The alcoholic on the road is Glendon Brown, and I'm unfortunately drinking an Alexander Keith cider, and it's pretty fucking mediocre.
I'm getting into the...
That's never been... Sorry, mediocre has never been precedented by pretty fucking. Okay? It's either pretty bad or pretty fucking amazing.
and the grabber train already did it.
Really
Pretty
mediocre.
fucking...
It's really solidly mediocre. It's like it's only like plus.
It's right in the middle.
50, yeah.
Okay, well, I'm drinking I tried to get something unique because you guys are fucking boring me with your boring brews.
Thank you, Nooch.
Yeah, so I got a Tree Brewing Company Jumpin' Jack India Pumpkin Ale, limited edition.
Okay, they're really sick. They're out of Kelowna and they're awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, it's not really pumpkin-y, but I guess I'm getting into the Thanksgiving spirit, and Canadian Thanksgiving coming up soon, so it's not bad.
Good work on that.
Oh, so we have an international audience. And we need
Absolutely.
to specify that. Yeah.
For my
Totally.
friends in
Hey,
Croatia,
you have the
fuck, that's
sickest
good.
brews.
I love the optimism in that statement. It's so innocent.
It's
the internet. We might have people from Europe listening in.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Who might
what's
not know what
Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving is a holiday where we celebrate arriving in North America
Absolutely.
and slaughtering a lot of Indians. Oh wait, it wasn't slaughtering; it was being nice to. But that's the lie.
That's right. It's a pilgrimage, you're right.
Well, on that
And
note, I'm
I'm-
also drinking a pumpkin ale.
Attaboy.
You're also celebrating the slaughter, eh?
The slaughter, man. It's all about
Let's
that.
hear your hipster beer, Mike.
No, yeah, I'm drinking the High Baller Pumpkin Ale from
Nice.
Grand River Brewing.
High baller.
Yeah, like you said, it's fall time officially as of a week, and it's October, so I'm doing it.
Nice. And Pete, anything for you?
Yeah, I'm just drinking a nice can of what they call lemonade here. However, it'd be more what they would call something like Sprite in Canada.
We have an Australian audience. Maybe they'd be able to relate to that.
What's that, sorry?
We might have an Australian audience who can relate to what you're saying.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
So fuck you,
Yeah,
bud.
so,
all
'cause
right?
I actually got
You're right. Let's
Head
let's actually add another caveat there. We might have an audience.
True.
Oh,
there
right,
you go.
There might be someone other than us.
Start that right off just like in a blanket statement. I feel good about that.
I'm gonna send this to my grandma.
Oh man, she's totally gonna listen to it too. Oh, now we're gonna censor ourselves.
Fair enough. Okay, well, the topic of the week this week is we're going to be discussing what makes a game a masterpiece. The idea came when Dan and I were kind of discussing about it. We just wanted to talk about a more in-depth topic than last week, rather than just tell stories. We kind of want to discuss. We're going to go through some games that gamers in general think are like the must-plays, right? And I'll name a few right off the top of my head, and I just want to know what you guys think, and then we'll just get the conversation started. So feel free to jump in. When gamers think of masterpieces, they usually say games like Super Mario 64, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, Chrono Trigger, Super Mario Galaxy,
Metal Gear Solid.
Even recent games, yeah, Metal Gear Solid, up to games like The Last of Us, which was just released 2 years ago. So what do you guys think about that selection, that initial selection I have, and what do you think stands out in those games that I said?
I've played a shocking few of those games. That's what stands out for me personally.
I've played almost all of them.
Attaboy.
Well, I guess the oldest one on that list was Chrono Trigger, right?
Yeah, sure. Unless you want to count the Super Mario series, yeah.
Because it was SNES era, I think.
Yeah.
That's right.
But one of the key things I remember from that game is the New Game Plus, multiple endings.
Oh, yes.
Which, surprisingly, it seems to be not that common in today's games. Eh? I think Dark Souls kind of brought it back in Demon Souls, but for the most part, games nowadays don't really want you to be able to kick ass in New Game Plus, It's kind of a shame.
Well, the Arkham games had it too.
All right, fair enough.
Where it would actually hide the indicator that someone was attacking you, so you had to pay attention to the animation rather than this press B to jump kind of.
Right, and you still have all your gadgets from when you finish the game, so you just go and wreck
That's
shit,
right, yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
So it still comes out now and again, but it's not anything you see.
Yeah.
I don't know that it ever was in like every game that you would have played.
Yeah. But why do you bring that up? Do you think it's a criteria for a great game? Like,
I was thinking about that.
Replayability-wise.
replayability-wise. I think that's one good thing about these old games is that they were so replayable, right?
Yeah. But the thing about Chrono Trigger is even without that, it would have been phenomenal.
That's a good
Even
point.
without...
Yeah.
It's a really good point.
'Cause it was
Yeah,
like
is
the
that a
perfect
defining
storm.
element?
I
It was
think.
like...
Sorry, go.
There was Squaresoft and Enix were the two leading RPG producers at the time, and they actually made that game together. A lot of people don't know much about Enix because Dragon Quest isn't as popular here as it is in Japan, but it's pretty much just as big as Final Fantasy in Japan, as far as I understand.
And it was even the other collaboration which you probably know about is Akira Toriyama, who's the drawer, the animator for Dragon Ball Z. He did all the character design for that as well. So it was kind of like this huge project for Squaresoft.
Yeah,
Well-
yeah, and don't forget the music was Nobuo Uematsu and Yasunori Mitsuda, two of
Another collaboration.
the best game composers ever.
That's a really good point. I think so it just goes to show like even that kind of collaboration like really brings out a game and puts it at its finest because they were able to make like such an amazing story and even like things like music and graphics and all that stuff were cutting edge even back in the SNES days, right? But moving on, there's one trait I was thinking about when I was thinking of games that people say are masterpieces, and the one funny thing I saw was that a lot of the games I mentioned are actually Nintendo games. Now the older ones may be because like Nintendo was the main player in consoles, but I feel like even if you talk today about like amazing games, you really see that Nintendo is at the forefront of that. Like you talk about games like Ocarina, Super Mario 64, Super Mario Galaxy, the Metroid Prime, Metroid games. Like all those are without a doubt top tier AAA amazing games, and all made by Nintendo.
6.
Pardon me?
Final Fantasy 6.
Oh yeah, okay, that's a SquareSoft game, but released on Nintendo. You're right. But
Yeah,
so I just wanted to kind of see what you guys thought about that. What is it about Nintendo that they're able to make these insanely memorable games?
One of the points that I thought of when thinking about this topic was just on a purely like visceral level, like having an emotional connection with the player is the thing that was in the most forefront for me that would make a difference between a game being considered replayable and a masterpiece and absolutely beautiful in comparison to just a game.
So what do you mean by emotional? Are you talking about?
Yeah, I was gonna ask.
An actual emotional connection, like making you like Ocarina of Time. These are things. They're very good stories. They make you you think about the way you feel about things when you play them, and that's what actually creates an emotional connection. And
Are you talking about nostalgia?
no, they just make
Well,
you
like
feel
just
something
playing the game,
in the
you're
same way
You're
that
putting
like
yourself in the world,
I see.
kind
I
of thing.
see.
not even necessarily yourself. It can be something fantastical. I mean, we watch movies, and like I don't think that I'm fucking Mad Max, but like you feel something about what he's doing and what's happening. So it doesn't have to be you. It doesn't have to be nostalgia. It just has to be something. You feel something. Maybe it's anger. Maybe it's love. Maybe it is nostalgia. That's a great example because that is something that's very powerful. But
When the water temple's concerned, it's definitely anger.
That'd probably be more specifically frustration, right?
Yeah.
But it could be with the character. It could be just with the story in general, the arc, the world. It's not defined by one thing.
See, the one thing I was sort of agreeing with that, but then I look at like Super Mario Galaxy or whatever you were mentioning, Nuge, and like I don't feel a connection to Mario. Like I don't have that same
You don't
sort
want to
of.
save your princess? I thought that was like the carnal instinct.
It's a little more far fetched for me. Like Ocarina of Time, like sort of I can kind of maybe relate a little bit more. But
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know about the whole Mario thing. That's what I was wondering.
So what is it about Super Mario Galaxy that you think makes it one of the best games, most memorable games of all time?
One of the top things about that game for me was soundtrack for sure. And I don't know if
that's
that's
good.
yeah, it was
Big jump to
good.
orchestra, right? Yeah.
One of the things I really liked about Super Mario Galaxy is just how natural it felt when you just picked up the controller and just started playing. Everything just worked. There was no moment you just felt like an idiot and just couldn't even control yourself. You know, everything is so tight, and you know what you thought of and what you tried to do translated on the screen to what happened. It's just controlling. Controls were just great.
I watched the phenomenal.
Even though it was a completely new environment to play in, like
Yeah, totally.
I really respect that game because you can tell that it is like programmers and game designers at their finest. I watched a YouTube video of someone like literally breaking down every step of that game, and it was so enjoyable. I highly recommend it. It's a YouTube channel called Matthew Matosis, and he talks about I was talking about one aspect that he does, but it's like a 1 hour long video, and he talks about the risk versus reward with the spin, which is when you shake the Wiimote, versus the ground pound. And he says that with the spin, you can kill anyone, and it's pretty simple because it's a 360-degree attack. Kind of good for beginners, but you collect only jewels from it. Whereas the ground pound is only on a single point, which is usually Mario's shadow whenever he jumps. But it needs to be exactly where you go. But the reward for that is that you get a life from it, so you can get a coin which translates to your life. Which is, I just like that's such a simple thing that no one would notice, no one would advertise, no one would ever talk about. But like, it's so clever, you know. Like they were thinking about the player every step of the way in that game.
Yeah.
There was actually a little bit of a co-op aspect to that game, which it wasn't an amazing co-op by any means, but it was kind of fun that they added that in, that you could be the second player and you were the Luma and you could also collect the little...
Yeah, the girlfriend / little brother sister mode.
Yeah, exactly. Here, collect jewels for me.
Yeah, you're still helping out. It's great. What about you, Hayman? You've been a bit quiet. What do you think about games that are masterpieces? Anything you want to bring up?
The one thing that I've always noticed with at least some of my favorite games that I've liked, and usually it's mainly because they're also the masterpieces, so like Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VII, all that sort of stuff. The storyline always starts small. So, for instance, in Chrono Trigger, what's the first thing that what are you supposed to be doing?
the fair, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You start at the fair.
Right.
You start at the fair. Oh no, some time thing where you have to worry about that. It's not that bad, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're starting small. You have a small little objective, and then that you get introduced to Magnus. Okay, so then from Magnus you move on, and then you move on, and then it just slowly escalates. With Final Fantasy IX, exact same sort of way. That's another game that a lot of people definitely like. It's you start off small. You start off trying to kidnap the princess, bring her away, and then escalates.
I like that. Greatness from small beginnings is kind of the trait you're talking about, right?
Yeah. And some games just try and get to the big point immediately.
Yeah.
And for the most part, that's failed. Another Final Fantasy game where that has succeeded was Final Fantasy X.
Yeah.
But even that still escalated from the main point. Like right away.
That was an epic start.
Yeah, exactly. Right away, you're thrust into it. You know Sin. Your whole goal is to defeat Sin. And then, spoiler alert, you get introduced in Seymour, and suddenly it becomes escalated.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. It's funny that you mentioned so many Final Fantasy titles, and rightfully so. I think they're all masterpieces in their own way. But I think what SquareSoft really nailed before the newer titles is that the story is the most important element. You need to have something that's relatable, like you said, greatness for small beginnings. But then also this little person who's not really significant in the world can rise above odds and then save the world. I think that was their common trait in all those early Final Fantasy games.
Yeah, and
that's
God
classic.
forbid, they used a little comic relief every once in a while too.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I noticed about Final Fantasy VII versus Advent Children is that Advent Children is just so dark and stern and serious throughout the whole damn thing.
Yeah.
But if you play Final Fantasy VII, there's like the cross-dressing part.
Yeah.
There's tons of laughs, balancing off all the darkness.
Absolutely.
And I like that.
In terms of writing, in terms of stories, this is one thing that I also love to discuss. I think gaming has a long, long way to go to even come close to movies or TV shows. But then again, it's also so unique in the sense that you can really do things that you can't do with a movie or TV show. Like a movie or TV show doesn't care if you don't watch it. It's gonna keep going. But a game, if you don't do anything, if you just put the controller down, the game is at a standstill. It needs your input to move on. So people can do a lot of clever things, and that's my segue to another great game that I think deserves to be on the masterpiece list, which is Metal Gear Solid. I know a lot of you guys haven't really played it, but I really think that was one game that really transcended the idea of the game aspect. Like, it really turned things over where it's not just a story that you're watching, it's a story that you're playing, and there's a big difference between that.
I thought of something, and I think it might reply a little bit to Metal Gear Solid as well, is that those three games, particularly Metal Gear Solid, Ocarina of Time, and Super Mario 64, they seem to be games that, whether they defined their franchise because they were so good, or they defined their franchise because they were the sort of basic story that everything else is built off from. So you think of Super Mario Sunshine, he's got the hose. You think of the Wind Waker, he's got the boat.
Yeah.
But Ocarina of Time is like the basic story. And so is Super Mario 64. There's no gimmicks,
Yeah. Do you think it's because it was the first of its kind, it was so refreshing, it's like a building block? Or do you think, does that mean that, do you think that there's no games today that can really be like a building block for future games? Have we figured everything out that there is?
I wonder, maybe the developers are too caught up with trying to create a new gimmick or something new to do with the game instead of just make it a great game. They have to have some feature. That's what it feels like anyway.
Well, I mean, sorry to keep going back to the same topic, but that's where I think Super Mario Galaxy went, where they had this amazing formula with Super Mario 64. They tried to mimic it with Sunshine. It was a very memorable game, but Galaxy just blew it out of the water,
It did.
Right? So it's just so interesting that when you just break it down to just gameplay, it was just so solid in that sense, right? Galaxy 2 especially, I feel like is even the better game in the sense that they cut out all the trim, the fat, which is not that much, to be fair, because Galaxy 1 was a solid game, but 2 was even more solid. It was crazy. But here's another game that I want to talk about as a masterpiece, if you don't mind changing subjects, is Portal. I think Portal is a game that deserves to be one of the best games of all time. But
that was going to be my counterpoint to new games.
Yeah, me
that
too.
aren't on the list because the list provided earlier was basically all stuff that's old.
All right, well, let's go ahead. Let's move on to the more 7th and 8th generation.
But I think
There was one gun in Portal,
yeah,
and you had to figure out how to solve puzzles with your one gun.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't get a new gun as the game went on. The puzzles just got harder.
Yeah.
Is that a gimmick?
Yeah.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Because the game was built around that. It wasn't it's called Portal, and you made portals.
Yep.
It wasn't Super Mario who now has a big hose.
Yeah. Okay, well, let me ask you, if it was Portal and it was just a set of 50 puzzles, would it still be a masterpiece of a game? Or was it the story that made it?
It was definitely both.
Right? It was that combination of GLaDOS with the crazy ending that really made it a memorable game, right?
you're right. It was good.
And
it
I
would've
think
been
it
good.
goes back to what Glenn was talking about earlier with having that emotional connection was
Very
she was
good.
always talking to you, even though you're playing as Chell.
And then
Like,
you just freak
it's
the
always
fuck
from
out
that
at the
first
end.
person.
That's a visceral emotion. It doesn't have it can be fear too.
Well, Mike, I love what Mike and I went through with that game because, we really thought we broke the game at the end. I thought
Oh, yeah.
that wasn't supposed to happen. And then
Yeah.
the game keeps going on and you're like, this is insane. They planned for this,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That surprise moment really, that's what I mean when I talk about how games are not the same as TVs and movies, because you experience that and you really think that you discovered it. And that's what the beauty of Portal was. When you figured out a puzzle, you thought you were the smartest person in the world.
Yeah, that's true.
And even that kind of what Glenn said about I think the invoking emotion thing is important, obviously. And whether going back to the whole Mario as a character, I think for me, as we were talking, I realized that it's not the princess adventure shit that kind of I like. It's like Mario's goofiness in me that I like enjoy, and I get to
There you go. You got something.
experience that kind of through that. So I'm right with you there.
Yeah.
There you go.
There's
Right?
There's one more game I want to talk about before I try and tie this up, and that's the most recent game I can think of that I would classify as a masterpiece, and that's the one that's probably gotten the most praise, mainly due to the fact that it's the newest, and it's The Last of Us. A lot of you guys have not played it, so you may not be able to speak to it, but I want to give it a shout out because I really do think it is one of those games that really jumps to the forefront when it comes to story, and it just focuses on story only. And like its gameplay elements are weak sometimes, and people complain about the repetitive nature of it. But where it really excels is the fact that it delivers a truly memorable story that like really stays with you and makes you think and makes you like question everything you've done in the game. And at the end of that game, you're sitting there and you're looking at the screen, and it's the same reaction as you get from like an amazing movie or a great TV episode, you know. And it definitely deserves to be called a masterpiece because it is one of the best games I've ever played in my life.
I would just like to add one other game that's kind of recent, Mass Effect. That got a lot of like Mass Effect 1, Mass Effect 2.
I think that game, I agree with you, Him, and I think that game deserves a lot of credit because not only is it a great game, but it's a great universe. Like, it's trying to do what, like, Star Wars and, like, the Avengers and Marvel and stuff is doing, right? Like, it's so deep in lore that you could make 1,000 games and still wouldn't, it would scratch the surface of how amazing this universe is.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a very, very good point for that. So, I guess
You know what's...
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
I was going to add one thing just to kind of leave us maybe with thinking of something if we're getting close to that time. And it was, I sometimes we're all taking turns, whatever. And Nuge and I live together, so I'd watch and play. And for some reason, Mass Effect never as a viewer, even though games like you said, Nuge, are supposed to be you're experiencing it, whatever. All those other games I actually still enjoy as a viewer. But for Mass Effect, I didn't get the same sort of satisfaction watching as a viewer.
Fair. That's fair. You know what? That's a very fair point, and I think that's a good criteria to include. I mean, like you look at all the other games that we talked about, and you're right. Even as a viewer, it's enjoyable. And Mass Effect was more like the RPG, like you just get sucked into it as a player, right?
Yeah, and I remember like even the artistic side of like the whole Shadow of Colossus thing. Like it's not a super high exciting game except for you're doing the boss fight, and like. I was just enjoying chilling and watching it, and I'd like kind of like troll you and be like, "Dude, what if like in the end you were the dick?" And like it happened.
I love that. I'm glad you mentioned that because that was something I was going to mention that we forgot. Is Shadow of the Colossus. That is definitely a game that again deserves a masterpiece, and it's at the forefront of when people say our games aren't. And they bring up Shadow of the Colossus, and that game was very artistic. I mean, you try and propose that idea to someone, I'm going to make a game with just bosses. It's insane, right? But it worked so well because of everything you guys have talked about today. It worked because of the soundtrack, it worked because of the gameplay, it worked because of the like aesthetic of the game, everything. And like even simple things like Glenn said about like the way it made you feel, like you got connected to these characters, like the horse, for God's sake. You get attached to a horse,
I love that you brought that up because I love that discussion, like are video games art, and I think everyone in this call would agree yes, but then the question becomes what do you define as art? And my personal definition of what art is things that make you feel emotion, and that's why video games are art to me. And it's true that like not all movies are art to me, because not all movies do make me feel emotion, but a lot are, so therefore that genre is. And I feel the same way about video games, and a lot of the video games that have made me feel emotion are the ones that I consider to be art and masterpieces.
Well said.
Well said.
Okay, well I'm gonna wrap this up. I'm gonna ask you all one last question, and you guys let me know what you think. So we talked about a lot of games today. What do you think it'll take for the next game to come out for you to consider it a masterpiece and like the best game of the last 5 years, say? What kind of traits, to summarize kind of what we talked about, would you be looking for to call it a masterpiece?
To reiterate what I've said, like just to feel a gamut of emotions, not just one but many throughout the course of a story arc.
Fair enough. Anyone else want to chime in?
I'm gonna definitely say start small and big.
Fair
Yeah,
enough.
and
That's
have a
always the best.
well-built world as you're going through too.
Yeah.
Like games are trying to get bigger, and a lot of them get big, but don't fill it with anything.
Very good point. Very good
There's
point.
a lot of voids.
I think
Yeah.
a lot of developers focus on like hours of content, right? So they shove in all these
exactly.
side quests and stuff, but they don't really put a lot of work into it. But I mean, it's a game for a reason, right? So gameplay should be at the forefront of whatever you do. But as Glenn said, if you combine a stellar story to it, and if you do it in unique ways that only a game can do it, like all the power to you. That really puts it apart. Let's think about games like Portal and everything I'm talking about, like where you forge a relation with the characters in the game. The payout is so much better when that happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's quality over quantity, I think. You can have a whole game that takes place in a police station and have it be a great game, you know? You don't have to have this massive world, because then, like you're saying, people will start cutting corners and there won't be as much attention to detail, and they'll, you know, the gameplay might suffer as a result, or the story, the gameplay, the music, you know. Just keep each element and try to maximize that.
Yep.
High quality content, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. The sort of high quality content, the things you mentioned with invoking emotions. I like how you said a range of emotions too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Smooth execution, the whole artistic soundtrack thing, and I think also we sort of touched base on it, but I do think some sort of element of something new and refreshing, and it's that can be debatable, right? But
Yeah.
something new and refreshing will help. I think.
That'll always help for sure.
It's interesting you bring up range of emotion, because like emotion doesn't need to be expressed mainly through story. Like it doesn't have to be like, here's this sad moment, feel sad. It could be something as simple as what like Mike talked about, where like it invokes the goofiness in you when you play the character, or like you just get happy being in that environment. Like Little Big Planet is an example of that, where like you were just
good
happy
example.
playing it. You know, like it's
Maybe even happiness is the only emotion you need to feel.
Fair enough,
When
fair
talking specifically of happiness.
fair enough.
Well, another example of just a different emotion is playing Skyrim, coming out of that cave and seeing the world. Like,
yep, or Fallout.
right
it's
there.
Is it awe? Is that awe?
awe.
I believe that is awe.
Yeah.
There we go.
How about this emotion, fear? So,
Powerful.
have you guys ever played? It's called Amnesia: The Dark Descent. I'm not going to call it a masterpiece.
Yeah.
You mean
It's
Nope,
gonna be
the
mentioned
Nope,
in this podcast.
Yeah. I have seen people play it. I'm too scared to play it.
I think I own
deal.
it.
You-
I've never installed it.
The reason the game is so scary is because you don't have a way to fight back.
Absolutely. Great
So
point.
it's like an example of taking something away and making it better, because that's why that's the root of fear, is not knowing what to do or not having an option.
yeah.
Being
You
helpless.
know, you can't fight back in that game. What you do when the monsters come is you hide.
Yeah. When you have a gun, you at least have that as a backup. Like you just shoot them until they're dead, you know. But Amnesia truly
And-
was just like, straight up fear.
And you can't look at them either. You have a fear meter, and if you look straight at the monsters, you lose.
That was a very
So there's
smart,
even
very
more
smart.
That
fear
is
of the
so
unknown.
scary. That is so much scarier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was saying before, like settings, right? This whole game takes place in one castle, but that's the thing. It's like you get to experience every corner of that castle. It's not a set that you just see a little bit of and then you move on. It's you learn the secret passageways. You go to the library, the cellar, all these areas. You know,
Yeah.
it's
yeah.
really cool.
I-
It's not a masterpiece. Don't get me wrong, but it's on the right
But it's
track
interesting.
towards what makes a game good.
Absolutely. You know what? And that's why I think I'm going to say this for another topic, but I do want to just touch on it real quick before we sign off. That's why I think VR is really going to be the next step in video gaming. Like I think it's just, especially with horror, right? Like in a horror game, what do you do when you're scared? Like you pause it or you turn away. Like if you turn away in a VR, it's just going to show you behind yourself. Like you can't escape it, which is terrifying, but also so like. What's the word I'm looking for here? Like, you just get engrossed in it, you know? Like, you can't, like, It's insane. So I think if developers flock to it, VR will be the next push in terms of technology. But I'll save that for later. Any last thoughts before I sign off? What do you guys think?